Live from downtown Vancouver at the Vancouver Film School campus, it's time for EP Live. Hey, welcome to EP, and my name is Victor Lucas, and this is Bear Safi. I'm not even going to touch you, my friend.
Yes, the elbow. It's a weird time right now, ladies and gentlemen. Very weird time.
We have an amazing show for you today, and thank you guys for joining us. We are live at the VFS Cafe at 390 West Hastings, and we've got a couple things to say thank you for. First of all, to our friends at Sony Pictures Canada, who not only hooked up our audience with tickets to Bloodshot tonight, but they sent out some T-shirts and some posters. Sony Pictures Canada, you guys are amazing. Thank you so much. We're going to have a good time at the flick tonight. We've got some dedications that we've got to get to for the rundown, but I'm going to tell you first who our guests are. Josh Tsui, who directed an incredible documentary called Insert Coin about the history of Midway. He's on the show. And also Sam Machkovech from Technica, our friend Sam. He's going to be joining us to talk about the cancellation of E3 and some other things, and sort of diving into this interesting new phase that we're all moving forward into. But first, we've got a rundown to get to, and I'm going to dedicate this one to Max von Sydow, who passed away this week. Legendary actor, and we saw him most recently, I think, in The Force Awakens. He had one of the best lines in the movie. He said, "This will begin to make things right," which was kind of like a slight sort of apology, I think, for some of the previous Star Wars decisions.
There's a lot of little hidden little pieces of text in there for sure.
Yeah, but I also loved him as Ming the Merciless in that old Flash Gordon movie. Incredible actor. Also, to Johnny and Kim, they announced that they are having a baby, so
round
congratulations
of applause for that.
to Johnny and Kim. Happy console gamer.
Amazing.
So great. Their video is fantastic. You should watch that. Okay, let's get started with our rundown. It is official, E3 has been canceled. This morning, the ESA officially confirmed rumors that the annual video game trade show is canceled this year, citing the growing fears of COVID-19. This makes 2020 the first year without an E3 since the event began in 1995. The ESA says they're exploring the possibility of an online experience for the show, but no firm details about that have been revealed. And we're going to talk to Sam a little bit about that in a second here, but what did you think when you saw that?
The first person I thought of was actually you, Vic.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's not many journalists and people around who have been at E3 with a microphone and a camera since
all of
you.
them.
Yeah, I mean, like this is the first E3 that we are missing, and it's crazy to think that, I've always kind of referred to this as Christmas for gamers.
Yeah.
And it's a time for all of us to kind of come together, celebrate, and, get excited for each other. Even if it's a franchise that I don't care about, I love seeing other gamers get passionate and hype. And I feel like June is going to feel very empty this year.
I think the industry is going to fill June, and I honestly believe that this is going to be, the move to digital is happening, right?
Yeah.
And we're seeing things like Reggie Fils-Aimé join the board at GameStop and stuff to try to stave off this inevitability that digital is going to be where a lot of people consume this stuff. With COVID-19 becoming a deal around the world, I think video games are about to get more attention than they have had in lots of other ways, because we're going to be quarantined and stuck inside playing amazing video games, and we're also going to find out about video games in some pretty cool ways too.
Yeah.
But yes, it is unbelievably disappointing that we aren't going to get together, because E3, in addition to the game stuff, is the people stuff.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, it's the one time in the year where we just get to see everyone come together and celebrate. And it's different when it's online and the directs. And I know Xbox also, they said they're going to do a Xbox press conference, like a digital sort of deal. But it's just not going to feel the same. There's something about that stage presence and those interviews, and you coming up to Sam Witwer or Corey Balrog and just having those interactions that are so human.
I met Tommy Tallarico at E3 1995.
I mean, things happen, and it's the celebration of games, and it's crazy to think that we're not going to have something more in-depth to watch.
It is incredibly sad, but I also feel like this is also a statement about the way that E3 has been working with the industry itself, and also the LA Convention Center not really kind of understanding how valuable the video game companies coming to the convention center and being a center for the industry in Los Angeles, how important that is. Lots of layers there. We'll get into it a bit more with Sam in a bit here, but let's move on. When it comes to NFL exclusivity in the video game industry, EA has fumbled and lost possession. 2K Sports has inked a deal to create a new licensed NFL video game, or video games, for the first time since 2005. Since then, EA has been the exclusive maker of official NFL games through their Madden series, but the new deal will allow 2K to make their own NFL games at the same time. This will be a little different from Madden, though. 2K says that their games will be non-simulation, which means they'll likely be more arcadey and less realistic. The first of the new 2K NFL video games will touch down next year. If we're getting some NFL Blitz style games from 2K, I'm all for
NFL
that.
Blitz, NFL Street. I think there's a lot of space for the
Which
arcade.
EA owns both of those.
I know, but it's just that style.
Yeah.
And, you know, we see how well 2K does with the NBA 2K franchise.
Right.
Not only with their, you know, their simulation mode, their story mode. They have that playground where it's, you pretty much are walking around and you meet other players online with your character and
they
challenge
also
them to a street, you know.
They also did the Playgrounds game, too, for NBA.
That's right, yeah.
Where they sort of assumed it, they consumed it, and then they put it out there and sort of tied it to the 2K brand. And they've thrown too much microtransaction stuff in there, and hopefully that isn't a big part of what happens with this NFL deal.
Yeah, EA has that stuff too.
Yes.
But as we've seen with everything in the world, competition is a good thing.
Yeah.
I think that they might need a kick in the butt, and maybe 2K will be the ones to bring it.
I honestly hope that this is a new trend. I hope that this is a trend, and if we start to get into subscription for sports gaming, I think would be a pretty accessible thing for a lot of fans out there. Like they would probably prefer to pay a yearly fee and not have to buy anything, earn it all, as opposed to this is all pie in the sky. Because they make so much money.
That's what I was about to mention. I think they just make way too much money, and you really look at the regions outside of North America. Of, you know, especially with the FIFA games.
I hate that we talk about how much money all these things make.
I mean,
we legitimize it as this massive industry, but they're paying people to create the animation of ripping open cards.
Yeah,
you know?
I know. It's crazy. It's crazy. But who knows? Maybe 2K will surprise us here.
Yeah.
Let's think brightly about the future.
I mean,
but I'm excited.
That would be an interesting way for 2K to go right at EA and say, we're going to drop all the microtransactions. You can earn everything.
Man.
You pay one price, and it's a super fun, arcadey, football game.
Can you imagine the response for that? That'd
and
be crazy.
same if they do that with Playground, too, whatever they do with that Playground franchise that they have with the NBA. Anyways, the PS5 is right around the corner, but before it arrives, it looks like the PlayStation 4 is going out in style. Sony and Sucker Punch Productions have announced that their samurai game Ghost of Tsushima will hit the PS4 on June 26th, with The Last of Us Part 2 set to land in May. That makes Ghost of Tsushima I'm butchering the name, the last big first-party exclusive developed for the PS4, bringing an entire console generation to an end. It's unclear if the game will have some kind of up-resed version on the PS5. Sony has already stated that the PS5 will be backwards compatible with almost all PlayStation 4 games, so chances are it will at least run on the new console. This game looks ridiculous.
It looks so good. They just released the gameplay trailer. I'm actually might be a little bit more stoked for this than Last of Us in some ways. And I love The Last of Us. I absolutely adore it. But there's something about seeing Sucker Punch kind of take on a new IP and just to see what they've got. We have to imagine this is going to end up on the PC.
You think?
I think so. I mean, I'm thinking like 3-4 years down the line, just like Horizon.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we will start to see upgraded definitive editions on the PS5. We got to remember that Last of Us 1 released in 2012. PS4 came out in 2014. And then they launched with Last of Us Remastered. The one thing that the PS5 can't do that the Xbox One X can do is 4K at 60 frames a second.
Right.
And
we don't know much about PlayStation 5. That's the...
Well, you got to imagine it's going to do 4K at 60 frames a second.
Yes.
You know, at the very least.
About the PlayStation 5?
Yeah.
Whatever Xbox
5.
is sort of putting together around their machine, Sony will meet or exceed.
Yeah.
And all of their sort of keeping their cards close to their vest, which I think is also tied to COVID-19 and production issues.
Yeah, who knows?
I think that we will have some incredible technology. But what I think is really exciting about Xbox Series X is this backwards compatibility equation, and certainly that's been tipped at with PlayStation 5. You know, I think they've got to work it so every game that came out on PS4 is playable on PlayStation 5. They got to do whatever they can. I can't imagine what game wouldn't be playable on PlayStation 5.
I think that's the plan. I would be surprised if that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
I think what most people are kind of hoping for is PS3, PS2, and PS1 backwards compatibility.
Yeah, I've got
right?
all of those discs, man.
Yeah.
I want to be able to pull them off the shelf and play some
I think
of those
PS3
classics.
is the one that's kind of weird. That was a strange console to program for and a strange one to emulate. That's the one I'd be the most shocked to see, to
We're
be honest.
so many years since then. They have got to have the horsepower to deal with
I hope
that,
so.
you know?
Yeah.
All right, now it looks like the Robinson family isn't going to outlive the Netflix 3-season curse. Netflix has renewed their new Lost in Space series for a third and final season. Shooting will begin later this year with a premiere window slated for 2021, bringing the late Robinson family's journey to an end, at least until, not the late, the Robinson family's journey to an end, at least until the franchise is inevitably rebooted yet again. Lost in Space is just the latest that's where the late came from. Latest Netflix series to be canned after 3 seasons. The streaming giant has stated that 3 is their ideal number. Algorithms have determined that 4 or more seasons don't bring in as many new subscribers, so it's better to cancel at 3 and focus resources on new content instead.
Can we just not talk about algorithms and making good content? I feel like that just kills my soul, and you hear YouTubers always talk about,
I know.
Let's make a video that will get me the views through an algorithm rather than making a great video.
Right.
This is just where the industry's heading, and it's sad.
It's the Cylons and the Boards making content for us, right?
But the 3-season curse, it's like, I'm actually thinking now, it's not a lot of shows. I guess there's Black Mirror and Stranger Things that have kind of surpassed the 3-season mark.
True.
But yeah, a lot of stuff kind of gets canned right away.
You know what though, man? Like if you do 3 strong seasons of a show, that's pretty good.
That's pretty good. No, for
You
sure.
know? And I feel like so many shows, and I love Arrow and the Arrowverse, but there are so many fantastic shows that we can all point to that go on and on.
Lost.
And then they have to create. Remember the season of Lost where like a bunch of new people just showed
God.
up? And
Don't
they're
even
like,
talk to me about Lost.
who are
Nick.
those people? Where were they?
We're
They
not
never-
getting
never-
into that conversation today.
But every show has that.
It's
so
true.
I feel like, and I like Lost in Space. I know it's got some problems and some logic issues, and nobody listens to the mom, and she's awesome. But I like the show because at the heart of it is this family that really loves each other and tries to protect each other. And that there was an episode in the last season that just got me.
Yeah, it's a great point. Actually, thinking about it, even anime, a lot of you anime viewers know that a lot of the best animes are actually the ones that are sometimes 24 episodes or
the
12.
Brits do
Like
this.
they just kind of just give us a nice concrete story in a short amount of time.
Honestly,
and
what
stick
you
with us
do,
forever.
you come out with 3 seasons, you let that live. It's great work. Everybody makes some money, and they have a fun time building all that.
Yeah.
And then if you own that IP, you bring it back with a new cast again, and you do a reboot of the idea, or some kind of re-envisioning of everything. They do with Doctor Who, right?
Yeah, it's just crazy to think that Netflix will one day become like a dumpster fire of just reboots of their own franchises. We'll see a Stranger Things reboot.
Yeah.
And some people might accidentally watch the old one when anyways, I'm not looking forward to the future of this, but it is a good thing keeping seasons short.
Yes. All right. Well, we have got to move on, and right now we've got some ideas for you to make your weekend plans. Welcome to Weekend Plans, where we show you the best new games, movies, and TV shows to check out this week. Vin Diesel stars in the new sci-fi action movie Bloodshot, based on the Valiant comic series of the same name. It's kind of like a cross between The $6 Million Man and Total Recall, with Diesel playing a former soldier who, after being killed in battle, is brought back to life using futuristic nanotechnology that gives him superhuman strength and abilities.
It will not only make you stronger, it will heal you instantly.
The only problem is that the shady government organization behind it might have ulterior motives and is manipulating him for their own sinister ends. Expect plenty of CGI action and violence. Vin Diesel has struggled to recreate the same box office success that he's had with his biggest franchise, The Fast and the Furious, so he and distributor Sony Pictures are hoping Bloodshot will be the start of an entire series of films. If If you're looking for an action movie that's a little less bloody, Dave Bautista stars in the action comedy My Spy. He plays a CIA operative who, through a comical misadventure, finds himself at the mercy of his most formidable foe yet, a precocious 9-year-old girl. That means you can expect a mix of explosive mayhem and heartstring-pulling comedy, similar to franchises like, say, Guardians of the Galaxy. Bautista has already proven his comedy chops in that series, so we're curious to see how he fares in something more down-to-earth. Audiences should note that My Spy is hitting Canadian theaters this weekend, but in the United States, the release date has been pushed back a month amidst fears of a certain virus. If you want to avoid public spaces like movie theaters altogether, then why not stay inside with a good video game? Ori and the Will of the Wisps is the highly anticipated follow-up to 2015's award-winning platformer Ori and the Blind Forest. This time around, the White Guardian spirit Ori goes on a new adventure beyond the Forest of Nibel with loads of whimsical new characters and locations to discover. The upgrade system from the first game has been upgraded itself and will now give players more freedom to decide what skills and abilities they upgrade and when. Another change this time around is that there will be auto-saves rather than the cumbersome Soul Link save system from the last game. One thing that hasn't changed is the Microsoft exclusivity. Ori and the Will of the Wisps will only be available on the Xbox One and Windows. Console exclusivity hasn't struck out of the MLB The Show series just yet either. MLB The Show 20 is Sony's latest entry in their Major League Baseball series, and the last one being made exclusively for the PlayStation 4. You know the drill, players will get all the MLB teams and players recreated in stunning detail for one of the most realistic baseball experiences you can get, short of actually going to a real-life game. As for what's new, this is the first time minor league baseball is being fully featured, with Sony licensing all the real-life players rather than just using generic player models like the previous games. Looking ahead, the show is going multi-platform. Starting next year, it will be available on non-Sony consoles from rivals like Microsoft and Nintendo, not to mention the upcoming PlayStation 5. I guess you could say they'll have all their bases covered. Team Ninja is taking players to a fantastical version of feudal Japan with Neo 2, a sequel to their 2017 action RPG. Players will once again create their own playable character, a samurai who is imbued with the spirit of the supernatural yokai ghosts from Japanese mythology. That's a fancy way of saying that your character will have all kinds of cool supernatural abilities alongside traditional samurai sword fighting mechanics, a combination that helped make the first game such a hit. Public beta tests for Neo 2 actually started rolling out last year, and Team Ninja has made several big tweaks to the game mechanics since then, so fans will likely notice a few changes when they start playing the final version. Unfortunately, your progress from the betas won't carry over to the final game, so you'll be starting the adventure from scratch.
名は秀吉とせよ。
All right, you guys, our first guest today is a gentleman that we've had on the show a few times over the years as a game maker, but now he is a legit filmmaker. Josh Tsui joins us, and he has completed his work on Insert Coin, which is a fabulous documentary I got to watch last night about the history of Midway games. Everybody, please welcome Josh Tsui. How are you?
Good.
Great to see you, sir.
Thank you. No, great to be back.
How do you feel now that you've got a, when we talked before, which it's been like a year and a half, you had a lot of work already done, but it wasn't done. But now it is done, and you can show it to the world. How does it feel to finish a documentary like this?
It feels so good to get that weight off. It's I think it was like about a year and a half ago that we last talked. And it was just one of those things where I kept tinkering with it over and over again. This is one of the problems of passion projects, is that you just don't know when to end, So I didn't have, a game publisher telling me to wrap things up, or somebody else, lording over me. And so finally I had to get to a point where it had to be taken out of my hands. And just so I can just walk away from it. So it feels great. Suddenly my evenings are freed up to actually do things like play games and watch movies.
You obviously had a long run making video games, and I'm wondering if making movies was your first creative obsession, and then you made games, and then you got back to movies, or was this just something that erupted out of your love for the source material, the subject matter, and you had to become a filmmaker?
Yeah, so I grew up in Southern California, so I grew up around wanting to make movies. Much like a lot of people my age. When Star Wars came out, we all wanted to make Star Wars. So for the longest time, I wanted to make films, and I actually went to film school, and I kind of got into video games by accident. So when I got into Midway, it was much like many people back in the day, I thought I was going to be in there for maybe a year or two, and then go back to doing filmmaking. And so, yeah, obviously, that didn't happen. So, 20 plus years later, I thought to myself, I need to make a film, at least one film in my life, and this seemed like a great subject for it. So it's a little bit of both. I had filmmaking in my blood. I love video games. How can I, combine the two? And
That is awesome. Have we lost him? We got a freeze. Oh, there you are. You're back. We had a little bit of a freeze.
yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay. No worries. The subject of the documentary is Midway and Midway Games, and you worked there, so obviously you had a connection and some personal sort of reasons why you wanted to make this. But explain to everybody what was so special about Midway.
Man, it was it was this era in the early '90s, especially with Midway. A lot of people don't realize that arcades had died for a long time, and so this is, a point in Midway's history where they were open to experiment with anything. It's kind of like one of the quotes from the film from Ernest Cline is that Midway was like the punk rock of video games, and that was back then. There was no rules. We were kind of like all Lord of the Flies style making these games, and so the magic of it was we're making this up as we go along. The only thing we didn't have much money or anything, so the only thing we had was our own personalities and creativity. So a lot of the games that you see coming out of that era, it's because the creators, they just infused themselves into it. They didn't know if it was going to be good or not, so they're like, well, you know what, we're going to entertain ourselves and see what happens. And it's very, I liken it to Chuck Jones's Bugs Bunny cartoons or Tex Avery making his MGM cartoons. So it's just like, just throw everything out there and see what happens.
Awesome.
Yeah. Josh, it really reminds me, I don't know if you've seen a documentary called The Imagineering Story, and it's about Image Comics. Yep. And it's just a great piece about kind of these comic creators who became rock stars. I always attribute as Midway during your time was kind of the equivalent of that, of, you guys being kind of changing the game and coming together and making stuff that was, out of this world. I'm curious, how was that? How was, when you're making Mortal Kombat, you got to see your game all over the news, and it really created the ESRB, and it, stemmed so many new projects from it.
Yeah, no, I mean that, the teams making these games, I think they were just as surprised as anybody that they grew up, that they blew up as much as they did. And it's funny you bring up like the ESRB and how that got triggered from these games. Like we all kind of reveled in it. It's kind of like, oh man, we're getting in trouble. And all it's going to do is it's going to equate to bigger sales. I mean, it was just such a careless attitude at the time, for better or for worse, to be quite honest with you. So it was to see things get taken so seriously when we were just kind of joking around was pretty enlightening. And looking back on it now, a lot of it seems kind of silly, but it was a big deal back then.
Yeah, it was life or death in the industry at that point, wasn't it? You had like major politicians. There was a target reticule on some of your games, man. Yeah. One of my favorite bits in there. Well, I have a soft spot for Eugene Jarvis. We'll talk about that. But one of my favorite bits is John Tobias kind of recognizing that he was working with gods, and he didn't know that he was going to be there. This is the co-creator of Mortal Kombat, and he comes off, and I've known John. I met John at the very first E3 back in 1995, but he just comes off so, he's incredibly successful, but he comes off just as a very down-to-earth and humble guy. Is that kind of what you picked up from him?
That's exactly it. I mean, here's somebody who created a franchise that was billions and millions of dollars, and it's still hugely succceusly and back then, just a very humble, quiet guy doing his thing, and even to this day, he's the exact same way. I mean, he's the creative director of a new Warner Brothers studio out in San Diego now. Same person as that I knew, that I met 20 plus years ago. But I would say that was kind of the personality of just about everybody in that studio. These guys were like wildly successful, both financially and critically. But ultimately, they all did the work. Everything was just it was just very I don't know how to put it. It was like a very Midwestern type thing. Where it's like, hey, we're just go in, punch the clock, do our work, do it as well as possible, afterwards go play games, go have a drink, something like that. But nobody had airs or anything. Nobody was super arrogant or anything like that. We all knocked each other down quite a bit.
That's awesome. How old were you when you were working at Midway?
Well, I mean, when I was working at Midway, I was in my mid-20s, and and the funny thing is that, and you brought up Eugene Jarvis. I grew up with 80s arcade games like Defender and Robotron, and when I got to Midway, I didn't even know Eugene Jarvis was still there. So when I walked in, and there's Eugene Jarvis greeting me, and just kind of giving me a big welcome, it blew my mind. I was like, for an arcade rat like me, it was like walking into Oz, from Kansas, and just seeing all of these people that were, especially Jarvis, were heroes to me when I was a kid.
Yeah, Josh, someone in their mid-20s now probably missed that whole era of Midway. Why do you think that that's important to tell that story and to show the history?
I think, part of it is just so people can see where games came from. Like a lot of times, and especially with Mortal Kombat obviously is a hugely successful, strong franchise even to this day. But to see the humble beginnings of it is, I think is something that's super enlightening for younger people. And also, I just think that, I think it's kind of a kick for younger people to see how different it was to make games back then, or how naive we were about what we were putting into the games. Forget if you want to make games or not, or even if you don't like playing video games. To see just how something got started almost by accident, I think is just entertaining, in any medium.
Yeah. You were going to premiere this movie at South by Southwest, and of course the event got canceled because of COVID-19. How you're a filmmaker now, and you've got to find distribution for your movie. How are people going to be able to watch Insert Coin? And are you guys going to do virtual sort of premiere? Like, how are you going to get the buzz about this incredible movie out there?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's I'll be honest with you, and this is in speaking with other filmmakers that were supposed to be at South by and everything, because this is so unprecedented that nobody knows what the next steps are. It's not like I can contact somebody and say, hey, this happened, what would you do? And everyone's like, I have no idea. And I'm talking to like established documentarians. So right now, I mean, one of the benefits of getting accepted in South by is that it puts a nice stamp on the film. So the film, is going to be at quite a few other film festivals. So it's going to go through the film festival circuit. We'll see if there are any further cancellations and such. But because of that stamp of approval by South by, we've had distributors and various people contacting about the film. So it's given a lot of visibility. And so we're talking to a lot of people. We're trying to figure out, distribution and screening options and things like that. And just we'll see where the chips fall at this point. But like I said, it's like if South by, just getting accepted in South by was a huge deal for me. Like I've been taking this film one step at a time, and getting into the festival was a
Congratulations,
big deal.
man.
Yes.
No, that is amazing, dude. It is amazing that you got it there.
So that was a victory in itself. So the next thing is, all right, let's figure out what plan B is and make the best of this.
Yeah.
Do you think that we're turning a corner? I mean, you've been in this business, in the video game business, for a long time, as we have, not this guy, but we've been in the biz for a long time. And, I feel like things are shifting. We've got a Nintendo theme park happening. We have, a Sonic the Hedgehog becoming the #1 movie in the world, and Pokemon as a huge film with Ryan Reynolds, and docs are starting to emerge. We had the NBA Jam, the book, not too long ago. We had Rayan on. So do you feel like the appetite is just bigger and more aware and more appreciative of work like yours now?
Yeah, no, most definitely. It's interesting because, we kind of grew up in an era where video games were considered like a niche thing for kids.
Yeah.
Guess what? Like, when a game like NBA Jam makes 3 times the amount of Jurassic Park back in the day, that means there were a lot of kids playing those games, and now they're all adults. And they're adults that suddenly have jobs and are able to buy things. So the this niche market has become the mainstream. And I always kind of equate it to, movies from Marvel. Marvel comics back in the day, it was a niche comic book thing stuff. But now all the people that love those movies, love those comic books, they have families now, they're grown up, and they see these movies, and these IPs have now become the mainstream. So I've talked to a lot of distributors, and one of the things they always ask, well, hey, this documentary is great, but it's about video games. We don't know if that's a niche market or not, and I have to educate them and say, you know what, this is a massive audience. It'd be like saying, oh, people watching movies or TV is a niche audience. It's like it's just not the case. Everybody is playing games now.
Awesome. Well, the Marvel analogy is very apt because one of my favorite lines in the movie, and I'm not spoiling too much here, is the connection or the correlation that Eugene Jarvis is kind of like Midway's Stan Lee in a way. I know a lot of people don't know who Eugene Jarvis is. I work with a lot of the students here at the Vancouver Film School who are in game design, and they've never heard of Eugene Jarvis. And your movie is going to help to change a little bit of that. But tell the world why Eugene Jarvis is so important in our business.
So Eugene, like in the first big wave of video games back in the early '80s, Eugene Jarvis created a game called Defender, and that was back in the day. It was one of the most successful, if not the most successful, arcade games of the time. And you're talking about, arcade games back then cost, let's say, $4,000 to sell. They sold over 50,000 units. So if you do the math, it's just massive.
That's
the
awesome.
thing is, this was back in the early 80s. And over time, he is like the Stan Lee, or I jokingly like to say, he's like the Cher of video games, because every decade he has a hit game all the time. And he survives, and he influenced an entire generation, such as myself, to love video games, love arcade games, and want to create these games. And he's inspired multiple generations. So I was probably the first generation of kids inspired by him. But now he's making games to this day. He's the number one arcade he owns the number one arcade manufacturer in the world, And if you go to Dave & Buster's or anything like that, most of the games are from his company.
Right.
And
So if anybody walks into an arcade, a modern arcade, you're seeing his work all over the place. But he does like giant-sized Space Invaders, and his company's Raw Thrills. Yeah, he does tons.
Yeah. So he's inspired. So he's continuing. He's still making games. He still works hard at it. He's still inspiring people. And when I started this film, I knew that it would start with Eugene, but I didn't know where the story was going to go. But the more I talked to everybody and saw how we were all raised on his game, that really solidified the story. The story, the Midway story is also the story of Eugene Jarvis and how it all began.
I love that, man. I love that, in every soundbite he gives you in the movie, he's also laughing. He comes off as a person that's very aware of how fortunate he has been in his life, and he seems to love what he gets to do as much as we love his work.
Absolutely. He just has that energy, the positivity, and he'll always make time for people. He's just like a mad evil genius, and we all got affected by him.
Awesome. So, Josh, when are people going to be able to see Insert Coin, and where?
Well, that's a good question. So, like I said, we're working on the distribution. Like I said, we're going on, on quite a few different film festivals. But ultimately, once it gets distribution, obviously, we're going for like some of the largest streaming platforms. In talks with them, we want to get it everywhere. So I know that's kind of a big answer, but I don't have the solid answer right now. But our goal is to blast it out, not just to people, not just the video game outlets, but just everywhere, because it's, we want to hit as many mainstream platforms as possible.
Josh, before we let you go, what's your favorite Midway game?
Oh my gosh! So my favorite, the one that I always stop, and there's two actually, but they're both basketball. So NBA Jam, obviously, and NBA Showtime.
Okay.
Showtime, obviously I'm biased because I was working at the time, but there's something about NBA Showtime that we would be super competitive on it, and that's like the one game that I would just be very mean about. Like I would be very. I love those games. But yeah, beyond that, Robotron is a fantastic game.
Oh, Robotron.
Yeah.
Right here, man, right in my heart. We keep getting great new Mortal Kombat games. How come we don't have new NBA Jam games? I just don't understand that.
I'm telling you, so EA owns the IP for that, and they did a great version a few years ago. You guys were talking about the NFL license and bringing back games like Blitz and such. Yeah, there really should be a crazy NBA Jam style game out there, and especially in the esports era, I think it'd be fantastic. So yeah, everybody go petition EA to get that license back though.
I'll make sure our friends at EA see this video. Josh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And good luck with getting Insert Coin out there, and keep your eyes peeled. We'll let everybody know when it's out there, and I'll have a review of the movie very soon on the channel. But thank you, sir, and congratulations for finishing this wonderful feat.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, you guys, we're going to take a trip back in time with a brand new buried treasure. I found a perfect buried treasure as I was surfing around on my Game Pass account on my Xbox One. This is Tembo the Badass Elephant. It was published by Sega and developed by Game Freak. Yes, the same Game Freak that makes all the Pokemon games, or a bunch of them anyways. This is a very crazy game. You are an elephant, and honestly, there aren't enough video games where you get to play as an elephant, but you're an elephant as envisioned as kind of like a John Rambo type. And so you have all kinds of badass abilities, most of which have to do with physics and your heft and your ability to plow through different objects and obstructions. You're going to be fighting this army called the Phantom, and they have tanks and helicopters or choppers floating around, actually, that are shaped like giant peanuts. And you're trying to save Shell City, and you are just blasted through buildings and knocking over huge obstructions and watching all of the carnage unfold as you activate your powers but also push things and trample through things because you're so big. And so you're going to see a lot of destruction in this game. So it's not just like a typical cartoony character-based action platformer. Because you're so big and so powerful, you're going to see a lot of Hulk-like destruction, which makes this game a lot of fun. You see a lot of blow-ups. You see a lot of stuff blowing up on the screen, which is kind of a blast. I played this with my kid, and we were both just like, wow, this is much bigger and zanier and crazier than we were expecting. Great cartoony fidelity around this game as well. There's clearly a sense of humor and a sense of colorful fun with the way that the developers crafted this thing, and it all comes through. It is a blast to play. It's a blast to kind of check out, and it's also, because it's kind of a rarity, I guess it's a buried treasure, but it's kind of a rarity in that we don't see a lot of elephants as our main protagonists. It just feels so fresh, which makes it a perfect buried treasure. And, this was available for PC and for PlayStation 4, but it was pretty cool to just see it sitting there in the library of games. I could download it and try this out, and I honestly had a great time. It is a crazy, colorful, and super fun experience, and my kid and I both had a blast playing this sucker. Tembo the Badass Elephant is absolutely a badass buried treasure. All right, you guys, our next guest is from Ars Technica. You've seen him on EP many times because he is freaking awesome. His name is Sam Machkovech, and he joins us right now from his headquarters in Seattle, Washington. How are you doing, Sam?
Holding up, in Seattle. We've got some current events going on as of late, but I'm just hunkering down in my lair of fun.
Yeah, it's crazy days, man. Obviously, the reason why I wanted to have you on here is because COVID-19 is going around the world, and we just found out that E3 is going to be canceled this year. And you wrote one of the first articles. I've seen it retweeted and quoted all over the place. What did you think when you heard that news?
Well, I wasn't surprised, and that's because the spigot of behind-the-scenes information has started making its way to a lot of journalists.
Yeah.
The fact that I moved forward with the report simply because myself and Kyle Orland, also at Ars Technica, we were able to combine enough sources to verify it was going to be canceled today as opposed to delayed or moved to another place. But we were certainly not the only people hearing it. There's just been disarray following E3 for some time, and recent news about cities closing big public events didn't really help the show's chances.
How is the I know you're not able to get out too much right now in Seattle, but how is the mood right now in the city? It's one of the sort of epicenters right now for the what's going on right now. How does it feel down there?
Well, people are crying in the streets about E3. I'm kidding. It's just been, it depends neighborhood by neighborhood. Since I work from home, I'm not as affected. But depending on where you are in the city, there's a lot of closures thanks to big companies imploring their staffs to work from home. Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook, they each have policies where they're saying, please work from home. We are technology companies. You can log into a chat room and communicate digitally. And that's just really decimating a lot of the day-to-day sort of infrastructure. I do want to get back to what you were saying about how I feel about E3 closing, or shutting down at least this year. It's a mixed feeling. I've been believing that a sort of virtualized conference is the natural step because companies want to control the message. And without having to worry about managing a show floor, managing giant crowds, you're going to have companies that see what Nintendo's done with things like Nintendo Direct. I mean, they're already copying that already. When you, Sony and Microsoft, their gaming arms each have their own sort of versions of every few months. Hey, here's a bunch of carefully curated videos about what's to come. So that's one thing where I see that already being the case, already kind of happening. But I'm also a fan of being in a space and seeing how crowds react. Because when I'm just sheltered in my own home by myself, that's not the same as looking around and saying, wow, everyone's talking about Cyberpunk 2077 behind closed doors. And then you go yourself and go, oh, wait, that wasn't BS. That was legitimate.
Yeah.
Like those sorts of organic opportunities are hard to replicate with a giant grid of YouTube feeds and chat rooms.
You know, everybody talks about Nintendo and the Nintendo Directs as sort of the example for going forward, but people don't really recognize that they win E3s not just by the fact that they put a video out there. They also have usually the best booth with a lot of imagination, maybe not as many games as some of the other publishers, but they do it upright like they did last year with Luigi's Mansion 3, where it's a real like theme parks caliber celebration, and so they also have that live win as well. You know, the only thing that they don't do is the having a controller disconnect on stage. You know, like they miss all of that, but they get the wins in a bunch of different directions.
Well, there's also, here's my corollary. I used to be a music critic, went to concerts all the time, and there's a difference between how a band plays on an internet demo and how they play on a stage in front of a crowd, and how there's that back and forth. That sort of community understanding and outreach really matters, especially when you're a company headquartered in another nation, making things happen for a Western audience. And Nintendo, the fact that they continuously come to one of the biggest Western expos and say, here's our new stuff, play it, we're going to show you how it works, we're going to make it easy for you to play in a giant crowd and get that sort of sense of the community's reaction. All of their staff from the Seattle area comes in and really handles that well. Every single big company that does well at E3 has to essentially say, all right, we care about how people receive this stuff and how they choose to spend their valuable entertainment time. Absolutely. So I think losing that in E3 will be kind of a big blow, especially since this is a big year.
Yeah. Sam, what do you think about 2021? Do you think that this E3, missing the opportunity of having this E3, is going to make E3 2021 bigger, or will more companies drop out? Because it seems like the company's just been eating a lot of blows before COVID-19. What do you think about that?
Well, the biggest answer I have to that is the buzz that I'm getting from in my Twitter DMs and emails. Wow, that's a weird accent. Which is to say, people are mad. These companies did not get really clear information. The members of the ESA, the Entertainment Software Association, not because there's big companies that spend money on the ESA, and the thing they get out of it, being a member, is being part of E3. There's also government lobbying and some of these other sort of services, but those are not as valuable to a lot of these game companies, is the buzz that I am getting. I don't have a really hard confirmation about which studios are saying it, but there is a sort of sense that people are looking at the ESA and going, well, why are we paying these people if there's not going to be an E3, if they're just going to replace it with a digital event that I could have put on? So that's a big question mark. Are people going to just say, forget this, we're all out? Sorry, you guys blew. It's one thing for a natural disaster to get in the way of an event. It's another for a company to really leave the people who pay money to be a part of the whole proceeding in the dark.
Yeah, I mean, like the writing was on the wall with Sony and then Jeff Keighley and then IM8-Bit making these very public announcements that they're not going to be a part of it. Even EA leaving a few years ago and Activision Blizzard sort of being wishy-washy about E3. It's pissed me off because I've been to all the E3s and I love this 3-day celebration that the world gets to kind of see, and the message has been kind of smeared into a bunch of different directions. And I still believe in that, but I feel like we have moved away and said, let's open it to the public, and you know, we've forgotten a little bit about why this kind of festival of video games is still important for the world to kind of latch onto.
Well, I will say, I expect that these companies have a lot of money, and they have an interest in getting people's attention, and they have an interest in live events to find another way.
Yeah.
So for next year's involvement, when the question was about E3, not about will there be a giant event about video games run by people who make video games.
Yeah.
I believe that's definitely still in the cards. I know that Xbox has, what is it, XO1? They have an event that was in Mexico most recently.
Yeah.
I don't see them slowing down on the public push to own the entire ecosystem and say, hey, look at this giant event and just pay for Xbox Game Pass and that fun could be in your house.
Yeah.
Like that kind of messaging for every single big company. EA has a stake in it. Sony has a stake in it. Goodness, PC companies still want you to spend money on their things and have a say in it. The events are going to keep happening.
Yeah, I don't want it to be a bunch of individual events, though. You know, I like this idea of the industry coming together to kind of celebrate itself. It's a little bit more like the Cannes Film Festival is what I want E3 to evolve into, and I also don't want it to be open to the public. I know that that's been a way that, and it's not because I'm against the public participating in it, but
there's
I feel
the headline right now.
Victor Lucas hates the public.
I just, you know, there's enough professional people or enough commentators out there to fill the space, as well as that there's new ways to kind of engage retail around this stuff. Even if the move is going to digital, there's still a way to kind of show all of the ancillary hardware, ancillary projects, like products like what Nintendo always does is they have like a sample store of what Nintendo stuff could look like. And I think that stuff is still important. It physicalizes, in all senses of the word, what games can mean for people, you know, as opposed to just being demo booths.
It's a transitional phase. GameStop is currently struggling in the United States as a big physical gathering place, and they just brought on Reggie, who had been at Nintendo, and there's this, buzz that maybe they're going to try and become sort of an esports / hangout zone and convert in that way. When things change, the best ideas do tend to bubble up because the best ideas make money and keep getting supported, and good ideas are going to involve a mix of curated videos, limited events, and giant public things. And I embrace an opportunity for all this stuff to go crazy. I also don't care for a bunch of splintering events because we all signed on to Netflix back in the day when it was the one place where you could get a whole bunch of stuff piped into your TV screen. And now, how many streaming apps do I have installed that I don't want to use because I'm so annoyed? So I hate to be American about it, but the market may bear this out.
Yeah, and one of the things that they might do is instead of tons of demo, I mean maybe E3 continues, but it shrinks, but it still has value that way. But one of the things that I think would be smart for the show is to let people play the samples, the tastes of games that they would give to journalists on the show floor. Let people sort of download these early demos and stuff like that, which I know
stream them.
Or stream them.
I'm telling you, I don't think we're going to get out of the year 2021 without a major event where we are going to control the play of a game that's not out yet. You can't download it, but you can stream it from our server. That way, in case it's buggy or whatever, we limit it. I see that by the end of 2021 absolutely happening and being run by one of the big companies, your Google Stadia, your Microsoft xCloud, whichever, with that banner on it. That's going to happen. It's not if, it's when.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about Xbox and Sony, because obviously, what's happening around the world is affecting supply chains and delivery of machines. Do you think that we're going to get a PlayStation 5 and an Xbox Series X this year? What do you think?
I think we're going to find out by essentially around when E3 would have taken place live, whether they do a digital event or not. That's how long they have to firm up their supply chain. Because right now, I actually, before I came on here, I asked some buddies who are in the know about producing devices, not necessarily game consoles. And their answer was, it's a battle for RAM. There's a whole lot of parts, but RAM is currently this sort of especially the high-end, super fast stuff that console makers want and phones want and all kinds of other products. These are not the issue is that shrinking supply is, number one, going to maybe push the release time, and two, push the budget. Because if there's less of it to buy, how is PlayStation going to get under 500 or under 550? Same with Xbox. What's the price point they want, and how much does a rapidly evolving supply chain happen? Did they lock in their exact order before all this stuff went crazy? We don't really know, and I think that we're going to be seeing more leaks in that sense before long, because If these suppliers are based out of China and Korea, loose lips have ruled the day for years when it comes to phones and other devices. So I think by June we'll get those that sort of number idea.
It is amazing how little we know about the PlayStation 5. I mean, we know stuff that Mark Cerny has talked about to Wired, but we don't know very much more, which is amazing, right? Like, it's coming out soon. And
well, here in my answer to that, what we don't know, who have we not heard from in the traditional Sony camp for a while?
Yeah.
Insomniac was acquired by them. Am I right?
Yeah.
How long has it been since we've heard about the makers of Marvel's Spider-Man for PlayStation 4? We haven't heard from Guerrilla Games for a while. How long has it been since we've heard from the makers of Horizon Zero Dawn?
Right.
I think that Sony knows that its first-party lineup has been the differentiator. It's been the driver for when people look at both systems and go, well, they perform kind of similarly on my 1080p TV, but I can only get God of War, I can only get Horizon Zero Dawn, I can only get Spider-Man on this console first for a certain number of years. I believe that Sony is going to put them all out at once. We're going to get a big sizzle platter of which games those are as the reveal, because it's going to be the differentiator, not the hardware. The GPU and CPU and a lot of the other specs sound very similar based on between that Wired report and what Microsoft has reported.
Yeah.
So I think Sony's going to have that platter ready. I can't say exactly which games, but that's what I think is going to be that first big blowout, and why they've been holding off on the little bits of leaks here and there and here and there like Microsoft has.
Yeah.
Yeah, all that's going through my head is now, what does this mean for events like PAX? Does this mean that PAX 2020 is going to be a lot bigger now, or do we potentially see the cancellation of that event coming up soon too?
I am sure the people who run PAX, ReedPop, are really hoping that they get to take first crack at the public can go to events again and look at what we have ready for fall of 2020. Like, that would be the dream for them. There's no predicting what's going to happen in terms of events, in terms of cities and nations having their own sort of orders coming, but that would be the optimistic timeline, is that they or Gamescom or Tokyo Game Show, you pick one and they could have the crack.
That's crazy. That's awesome. All right, Sam, we're going to leave it there, but we'll definitely be calling you soon as new news erupts. You're one of our first people that we like to reach out to.
Can I throw out real quick, NBA Jam, Mark Turmel went to Zynga, and when he went to Zynga, he put a thing on Reddit, you can look it up, talking about how EA bumbled the launch of that NBA Jam. Producers changed gears, that thing's been left in the dust, people shouted out, this is EA's fault, let's get NBA Jam back. I heard
We
that
all
last
want it,
night.
yeah. I guess
this is the NBA Jam episode,
Yeah, this
ladies and gentlemen.
episode's dedicated to NBA Jam. Thank you, Sam. All right, guys, we're going to be heading out here because we've got a movie to get to, but we are going to leave you with my review of Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Enjoy that. We'll see you soon, and until then, play forever. It's a brisk, beautiful day here in Vancouver, and I get to talk about Ori and the Will of the Wisps. This is the sequel to the Blind Forest adventure that we went on not too long ago on our Xbox Ones and PCs. And what's interesting is I've actually been playing this new game crossplay. I've been playing it on the PC and also playing it on my Xbox One, and it's the first time I've actually played through the game for the first time, bouncing back and forth between both platforms, and I'm really impressed. Microsoft, you've done something quite wonderful here with being able to, just carry your save game across different devices like this. I've done it with different Xbox Ones, but never an Xbox One, then PC, and then back and forth, and I love it. It's great. This is a gorgeous game. You can tell just by looking at, just a little bit of imagery here. It's one of the most beautiful side-scrolling platformers I've ever played. It's a Metroidvania, just like the last game, but there have been a lot of refinements, particularly with the combat. You've got, great new abilities. Of course, you've got some hack and slash abilities and some projectile abilities. You've got an energy whip. I mean, this hews so much closer to a lot of the mechanics and the play of Metroid. It's getting a little crazy. even though it's cutesy and cartoony and endearing and lovely and, a little melancholy in bits, it's a brutal game. It is an incredibly difficult game. And that combat, the mechanics that you pick up, the combo attacks that you are able to pull off with your energy blade, and you've got other weapons too. You'll have like little sprite whip things that will whip around you and attack, or you'll throw an energy throwing star, and you can level all of those up. You can also give yourself a bunch of little skill orbs and choose which ones you want to, pull together. So I pretty much kept the magnet one going all the time, because every time you kill an enemy, it'll suck all of the money and the life orbs and the energy orbs that you need in order to use some of those energy attacks to you, instead of you having to run around the map and try to pick all of those things up. That was very useful. Clinging on walls is very useful. But there's some new abilities here, like the ability to burrow underground and take out enemies that way, and also find all kinds of secrets. This game is loaded with secrets. There's all kinds of incredible little areas that you'll find, and you'll feel like cheering once you kind of figure stuff out. This is a massive game. It feels much bigger than the last game, which was also quite large, but it just feels more ambitious in scope. It feels like you can jump into areas, and there's secrets within areas, and you're sort of going back into different rooms. I mean, not only do you have this massive map that sort of reveals itself to you, and then as you collect new abilities, you're able to go and retraverse back into areas and get the loot that you want there. There's lots of little merchants that you'll find along the way, and they will level up some of your skills or grant you new abilities or buff up your weapons in some way. All of it sort of allows you to go back and find all the stuff that you couldn't find before. One of the coolest ones that I saw is this ability to kind of light an area around you, and you go into this really dark and creepy kind of cave system where you can't see very far, and if you're in the darkness, it starts to burn through you, and eventually, poof, you die, and then you'll have to restart the area, but eventually you'll find the ability to create a glow around you, and then you'll be able to go into the darkness a little bit longer, a little bit further. Great stuff with that. I love the burrowing mechanic as well, because one of the things that you can do after you're burrowing, sort of like in a high-speed dig-dug kind of way, you can burst out of the sand like Echo the Dolphin or something. All of these references to 2D classic games. It's like I've been playing games for a long time or something. But you'll be able to burst out of the ground and then use your energy whip and zap up to something and then do a double jump. And God, it's just so tuned. It's clear that Moon Studio, they tapped into something incredible with the first story, but now they have, legitimately crafted, it's almost like you have to say Ori Metroidvania, or Metroidvania-Ori, these are so seminal, both of these games now, with this style of gameplay. Sure, they're borrowing lots of ideas and lots of different mechanics and, similarities to the way that you maneuver and whip yourself through worlds from other games, but it's so smartly crafted and so beautifully illustrated, and the music is just... It almost feels a little incongruous, because as beautiful as the visuals are, the music just lifts and is so large and massive and swells in such magnificent ways. It feels like it's like there's a movie going on in the house beside you and it's seeping through. There's lots of sequences in this game, just like in the previous game, where you're running for your life and the music is just challenging you the whole time, and you're like, oh my God, I gotta get out of here. What's a little bit strange about Ori, though, and I have to say this about the first game too, is that it's so, immediately attractive, and it's so innocent looking, this franchise. And holy crap, is it not innocent. Even at normal difficulty, I didn't play it on easy, and maybe I should have checked that out, but normal difficulty, it's hard. And there are choke points. There are points where you're going to be replaying stuff over and over and over and over again. I was losing my stuff. I was going to say shit, but I didn't say shit. I was losing my shit. And I was getting very angry. It was driving me crazy. I tweeted, what do you do when, you're stuck? And then I put a gif of the Hulk going, ah, because that's how I felt. And I'm playing a cute little game about a little sprite and his animal buddies, and everybody's so adorable, and I'm just like, I'm raging. I'm playing it like the Hulk. And that's weird. but that's how good the gameplay is. But just be aware that this is not a cutesy little kids game as much as it looks like a cutesy little kids game. You know, you might have family members in your household, little ones, or, you know, a partner or something. They're going to walk up and they're going, oh, this is beautiful. And then 10 minutes later, they're going to be seeing you just, so they may have to, like, calm you down a bit. So be ready for that. I do have to say that I was playing early code and I was having some issues with both versions of the game, some weird kind of rendering issues. It's been patched, but it made things a little bit cumbersome. One of the issues that exists is there have been some blue energy orbs that I haven't been able to pick up. And I actually uninstalled Ori and the Will of the Wisps on my Xbox One and then had to reinstall it, and it ran a little bit better. Consequently, that's why I was doing a lot of bouncing back and forth, just to see how both versions handled. It's all been patched, and it's running smoother, but I think be on the lookout. There might still be a few, if you're picking this up this weekend or this week to play, and spoiler alert, I think you should, you're probably going to run into a couple of little hiccups. This is an incredible game. It's one of the best 2D games I've ever played. Ever. I'm giving it a 10. It's amazing. And you owe it to yourself if you have a PC or the Xbox One. Something tells me this will come to other platforms like the Switch down the road. But, oh my God, this is an amazing game.